The mattress violently shook. My eyes snapped open. Trevor's face hovered inches from mine in the pitch black of my room at 2:47 in the morning. He was panting. The moonlight caught the edge of the object in his right hand. Our father's hunting knife. The blade was coated in something sticky and dark red. Fresh blood. With his other hand, my 15-year-old brother shoved a thick, heavy manila folder against my chest. He just got home. Trevor whispered, his breath frantic and hot against my cheek. He is covered in it. He rushed straight into the shower. Trevor's voice violently trembled. He explained how he crept into Marcus's office and used the bloody keys left on the desk to crack the floor safe. Desperate to find a gun to defend us, he found the folder instead. And he heard them whispering, Marcus and Vanessa, plotting to kill us on the lake trip this weekend. The last shred of sleep evaporated from my brain. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Pure. Freezing adrenaline flooded my veins. I flipped the folder open. The pale moonlight filtering through the blinds illuminated the nightmare staring back at me. I scanned the first page. Forged adoption papers. My hands turned to ice. The next page held fake social security numbers with our photos attached to names I had never seen before. But the true horror sat at the very back. 2 active life insurance policies, each guaranteeing a $1 million payout upon our deaths. They were stapled to a final, aggressively worded demand letter from a high-level crime syndicate. Marcus had botched a recent hit. He owed his bosses massive restitution by the end of the month. The upcoming family boating trip was never about bonding. It was an execution date, a desperate bailout to save their own lives by sacrificing ours. My mind violently rejected the reality, flashing back to every punishment, every cruel lecture Vanessa ever delivered. You are lucky we put a roof over your head, she used to hiss, her fingernails digging into my shoulder. You kids cost us everything. You owe us your obedience. I used to internalize that guilt, twisting myself into knots, trying to be the perfect, invisible daughter. They broke my spirit systematically, isolating us from the outside world, convincing us that their toxic household was the only safe place on earth. They designed that abuse to make me weak, to make me compliant so I would not fight back when it was time for the slaughter. But they forgot one thing. Surviving their daily psychological warfare made me hypervigilant. We were not their children. We were livestock, and the butchers were currently washing blood off their hands down the hall. I shoved the papers back into the folder and zipped it into my backpack. I grabbed Trevor by the shoulders, my grip tight enough to bruise. We are leaving, I whispered, right now. I shifted into a cold, mechanical survival mode. Panic was a luxury we could not afford. We slipped out of my bedroom, the floorboards silent beneath our socks. I crept downstairs toward Marcus's home office. The door was cracked open. I slid inside, grabbed his 2 primary burner phones off the charging station, and stuffed them into my pocket. I was cutting off his communication network. He would not be able to call his syndicate contacts for backup. Next to the phone sat a ring of keys attached to a fob I did not recognize. They belonged to a blue sedan parked down the street, a car Marcus brought home hours earlier, a car belonging to the man whose blood was currently drying on the hunting knife Trevor found. We slipped out the back door into the freezing Washington air. The dense Spokane woods surrounded the cabin, suffocating and dark. Marcus's heavy off-road SUV sat in the driveway. It was a beast of a machine, designed to pursue and destroy I knew I was not strong enough to quickly or silently / reinforce truck tires. Instead, I popped the hood. The metal groaned softly. I took the bloody hunting knife from Trevor, reached deep into the engine block, and completely severed the serpentine belt. I grabbed the spark plug wires and ripped them out with brutal force, crippling his best pursuit vehicle. We moved down the driveway to the stolen blue sedan. To avoid waking the monsters inside, we put the car in neutral. We planted our boots against the asphalt and pushed the heavy vehicle down the long, sloping driveway, the tires crunching softly against the gravel. When we reached the main road, I jumped behind the steering wheel and turned the ignition. The engine roared to life, shattering the silence of the woods. Instantly, the cabin lights snapped on. Marcus was awake, and he knew we were gone. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The blue sedan tore down the winding mountain road, the headlights cutting through the absolute darkness of the trees. Less than 3 minutes later, high beams flooded my rearview mirror. Marcus had taken his secondary backup truck. He was coming for us. The heavy grille of his truck violently slammed into our rear bumper. The sedan fishtailed, the tires screaming against the asphalt. Trevor shrieked, clutching the dashboard with white knuckles. My expression remained entirely blank. The terror in the car was suffocating, but my mind operated with absolute, icy clarity. I grabbed the stolen burner phone from my pocket and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered immediately. I did not scream. I did not beg. I delivered the information with military precision. I reported an active shooter in a black pickup truck, giving them the exact make, model, and license plate number. I told them a heavily armed man was attempting to run 2 teenagers off the road. The dispatcher ordered me to pull over. I ended the call. Driving aimlessly into the dark woods was a death sentence. Marcus knew these back roads better than anyone. He expected me to panic, to make a wrong turn, to drive us straight into a ditch where he could finish the job and stage the accident. But he severely underestimated the street smarts he forced me to develop. Working late shifts at the local diner, I learned every major highway route and every law enforcement checkpoint in the county. I yanked the steering wheel hard, routing our desperate chase directly onto Interstate 90. I aimed the sedan straight for the 24-hour commercial way station near the state line. It was perpetually flooded with industrial lights and heavily staffed by armed Washington state troopers. Marcus thought he was herding frightened sheep into the dark. He was actually being led straight into a federal snare. The way station erupted into view, glowing like a neon beacon against the black sky. I slammed the brakes. The sedan skidded into the inspection lane. The smell of burning rubber filling the cabin. Marcus's truck screeched to a halt right behind us, boxed in by concrete barriers. Before he could throw his truck into reverse, state troopers swarmed the vehicles from every direction. Weapons were drawn, flashlights blinded us, shouts echoed across the concrete. Step out of the vehicle and keep your hands visible. Marcus stepped out of his truck. He instantly dropped the hunting rifle he had resting on his passenger seat. I watched through the rearview mirror as he attempted to deploy his ultimate weapon, the concerned father routine. He raised his hands, his face contorting into an expression of desperate, loving panic. Officers, please. He shouted over the sirens. My daughter is having a mental breakdown. She stole that car. She needs a hospital. Please help her. I pushed my door open and stepped onto the concrete. The freezing wind whipped my hair across my face. A trooper approached me, his hand resting cautiously on his holster. I did not say a word about mental breakdowns. I simply reached into my backpack, pulled out the heavy manila folder, and shoved it against the trooper's chest. The officer opened it. He shined his flashlight on the forged adoption papers, the fake Social Security numbers, and the syndicate demand letter. He looked at the $2 million insurance policies. Then he looked at Marcus. The facade instantly shattered. Marcus realized the exact nature of the documents in the trooper's hands. His God complex crumbled in real time. The arrogant, untouchable monster who had terrorized us for 15 years vanished, replaced by a pathetic, terrified criminal staring down the barrel of a federal racketeering charge. The troopers slammed him onto the hood of his truck. The metal loudly buckled under his weight. Handcuffs ratcheted tight around his wrists. The troopers escorted Trevor and me to a local motel, utilizing it as a temporary safe house while they processed the scene and contacted our biological aunt. They posted a rookie deputy in a folding chair right outside our door. The nightmare seemed entirely over. Trevor curled up on the scratchy bedspread and immediately fell asleep, his exhausted body finally shutting down. I sat in the corner chair, staring at the locked door. The silence in the room felt heavy, almost suffocating. My survival instinct refused to turn off. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. At 4 o'clock in the morning, a heavy thud echoed from the hallway outside. Vanessa had never been caught at the cabin. While Marcus chased us, she had fled. I had stolen Marcus's burner phones, but I made one critical civilian mistake. I forgot to take the batteries out. Vanessa used her own burner phone to log into the carrier's portal and ping the GPS signal. She tracked us straight to the motel. Being a seasoned, manipulative criminal, she did not simply walk up and attack the guard. She called the motel front desk, posing as the police dispatcher, and ordered the rookie deputy to the lobby to receive an urgent, secure fax from the captain. The moment the deputy stepped onto the elevator, Vanessa breached our room. The wooden door violently splintered inward. Vanessa stood in the doorway, the hallway lights casting a long, terrifying shadow across the carpet. She held a high-voltage stun gun, the electrical prongs crackling with bright blue energy. Her eyes were completely unhinged. She stepped forward, ready to finish the job. Marcus started, but I had not been sleeping, anticipating danger. I had wedged the heavy wooden desk chair firmly under the door handle. When she kicked the door, the chair splintered, bottlenecking her entry and throwing her entirely off balance. I did not wait for the police to save us. I grabbed the heavy red fire extinguisher mounted on the wall next to the bathroom. As Vanessa stumbled through the broken doorway, I pulled the pin and squeezed the trigger. A massive cloud of blinding, suffocating dry chemicals blasted directly into her face. Vanessa shrieked, dropping the stun gun as she clawed blindly at her burning eyes. The heavy plastic weapon hit the carpet with a dull thud. I lunged forward. I scooped the stun gun off the floor, stepped out of the chemical cloud, and drove the crackling prongs directly into the side of her neck. Vanessa's body seized. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she collapsed heavily onto the floor, completely neutralized. I stood over the woman who had tormented me, manipulated me, and planned my murder. I dropped the stun gun. The threat was permanently extinguished. The next morning, the harsh fluorescent lights of the police precinct illuminated a reality I was still struggling to comprehend. Aunt Erica walked through the double doors. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. But the moment she saw us, she completely broke down. The emotional reunion was profound. For the first time in 15 years, we learned our true names. We were not the unwanted burdens Marcus and Vanessa claimed we were. We were fiercely loved, deeply missed, and relentlessly searched for. We bypassed the grueling years of courtroom logistics and skipped straight to the absolute ruin of our captors. Marcus and Vanessa faced federal RICO charges, kidnapping, and multiple counts of murder. But sending them to a concrete cell was not enough. I wanted them annihilated. My lawyer utilized a brilliant piece of legislation known as the Slayer Rule. Because the abusers plotted to murder the insured, the $2 million life insurance policies were legally voided. They would never see a single dime of the payout they destroyed our lives to get. Furthermore, Aunt Erica filed a devastating civil suit against them for 15 years of kidnapping and emotional distress. The courts moved with absolute ruthlessness. They seized the isolated cabin. They seized the vehicles. They drained every hidden bank account and liquidated every asset Marcus and Vanessa possessed to pay restitution. The monsters were sent to federal prison, completely bankrupt, stripped of their freedom, their money, and their false legacy. They rotted in maximum security with absolutely nothing to their names. I am sitting on the porch of a beautiful, sunlit house in Oregon now. The air smells like pine and rain, completely different from the suffocating darkness of the Spokane woods. Trevor is inside, laughing at a television show, sounding like a normal teenager for the very first time in his life. I look out over the yard and reflect on the absolute psychological warfare we survived. Marcus and Vanessa were not just killers. They were textbook narcissistic abusers. They did not look at children and see human beings. They saw investments. They saw assets that needed to be kept docile, isolated, and completely unaware of their own worth until it was time to cash out. Emotional abuse is a deliberate architecture. It is systematically designed to make the victim feel completely incapable of surviving without the abuser, creating a self-imposed prison where the doors are actually unlocked. Surviving that house taught me truths most people never have to learn. I want to share the 3 rules that kept me alive, because there are monsters hiding in plain sight in normal houses everywhere. Rule number 1, the illusion of debt. Toxic people will weaponize basic necessities to make you feel you owe them your life. They will remind you that they put food on your plate and a roof over your head, demanding your absolute obedience in return. Listen to me very closely. Real love does not keep a ledger. Providing the bare minimum requirements for human survival is not a favor, and it certainly does not buy them the right to destroy your mental health. If someone uses their generosity as a weapon to demand your silence, they are not a caregiver. They are a warden. Rule number 2, the weaponization of silence. Trust your paranoia. When something feels fundamentally wrong in your environment, it usually is. Abusers will gaslight you into believing you are crazy, overly sensitive, or ungrateful. They will tell you that the tension you feel is entirely in your own head. It is not. Your anxiety is often your survival instinct desperately trying to keep you alive. When the energy in a room makes your stomach turn, do not ignore it. Your body recognizes danger long before your brain is willing to accept the horrific truth. Rule number 3, the ultimate revenge is audacity. You cannot defeat monsters by appealing to their humanity because they simply do not have any crying, begging, or trying to explain your pain only gives them more ammunition. You defeat them by ruthlessly dismantling their leverage. The greatest threat to an abuser is a victim who suddenly realizes they hold the keys. When you stop reacting emotionally and start acting strategically, their entire power structure collapses. You walk away, you cut the ties, and you watch them suffocate in the vacuum of your absence. We spent 15 years living with ghosts, genuinely believing we were the ones haunting the house. We thought we were the problem, but the moment we stepped out of the dark and fought back, the monsters turned out to be nothing more than pathetic. Greedy criminals who broke under the weight of their own arrogance. If you are sitting in a room right now, looking at people who make you feel small, crazy, or indebted to them for your very existence, I need you to ask yourself a very hard question. Are they protecting you? Or are they simply guarding their investment? Are they keeping you safe? Or are they keeping you trapped so they can continue to drain your energy, your resources, or your sanity? You do not owe your abusers your loyalty. You do not owe them your future. And you certainly do not owe them your life. Drop a 100 in the comments below if you have ever had to cut toxic ties to save your own life. Share this story with someone who needs the courage to finally walk out the door, turn their back on the monsters, and never look back. I know exactly what you were screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, how do you live in a house for 15 years and not know the people raising you are actually your kidnappers? How do you miss all those massive red flags? Why didn't they run sooner? Here is the hard truth about psychological abuse. It is not always screaming and violence. If a monster acted like a monster 100% of the time, you would immediately run. Instead, toxic people use a psychological trap called intermittent reinforcement. I call it the slot machine effect. Vanessa did not just abuse Brooke. She gave her tiny, unpredictable crumbs of hope, a rare compliment, a moment of fake motherly warmth. When you are completely isolated and starving for love, you become addicted to those crumbs. You stay at the slot machine, pulling the lever, hoping this time you hit the jackpot of genuine affection. You convince yourself the red flags are just quirks. Brooke and Trevor were not stupid. They were systematically brainwashed to doubt their own reality. But the moment the illusion finally shattered, Brooke did not just panic. She executed a masterclass in survival and financial self-defense. Let us break down her exact strategy so you can apply these tools to your own life. First, we have the audit strategy. Scammers, abusers, and manipulators rely heavily on your ignorance. They want you confused. By opening that heavy manila folder, Brooke audited her own existence. She looked past the emotional manipulation and followed the money directly to those $2 million insurance policies and the syndicate debt. She uncovered the exact financial motive for their cruelty. When dealing with toxic people, always audit the situation. Look at the numbers, the contracts, and the hidden motives. Second, building the case. Brooke did not just run out the back door crying. She took the receipts. She stole Marcus's burner phones, cutting off his criminal network, and crippled his vehicle. But her smartest move was the trap. She lured him into a highly illuminated, federally staffed way station and handed the state troopers a perfectly packaged fraud case. She did not stand in the parking lot arguing with a narcissist. She let the paperwork do the talking. Finally, the buyout. The legal execution at the end of this story is brilliant. Brooke's lawyer utilized the Slayer rule, a real legal doctrine that prevents a killer from profiting off their victim. By voiding those insurance policies and hitting the abusers with a massive civil suit, Brooke did not just send them to prison. She legally liquidated every asset they possessed. She funded her new life and bought her ultimate freedom using their own resources. Here is the final verdict. You cannot outlove a toxic person, and you cannot fix someone who views you as an asset to be drained. If you are in a situation where your gut is screaming that something is fundamentally wrong, listen to it. Your survival instinct is always smarter than your guilt. You are allowed to audit the people in your life, and you are allowed to legally and financially protect yourself. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone who is quietly destroying your peace? Drop your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Hit that subscribe button for more street smart survival strategies. And remember, your peace of mind is the one asset you never compromise on.